All right, so what we're going to do is look at the opening of the play, the first little bit of the play, pull apart the language, and then try to make some connections with the broader views and values of the time and the different contexts that we studied with regards to the life Ibsen was living and the world that he had been born into with regards to Norway. Okay, so at the start of the play, please. All right. So just the first few pages to start off with, just so we can get our head around the opening scene. Now, like all plays, this is starting with this section which is italicized, and it's giving us a really good description of the set itself. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll try and link it as we go along. So, just following along, please. A comfortable room, furnished inexpensively, but with taste. Okay, let's make note of that as we're going along and what this can mean. In the back wall, there are two doors. That to the right leads out to a hall. The other, to the left, leads to Helma's study. Between them stands a piano. In the middle of the left-hand wall is a door with a window on its near side. Near the window is a round table with armchairs and a small sofa. In the wall on the right-hand side, rather to the back, is a door, and farther forward on this wall there is a tiled stove with a couple of easy chairs and a rocking chair in front of it. Between the door and the stove stands a little table. There are etchings on the wall, and there is a cabinet with china ornaments and other bric-a-brac, and a small bookcase with handsomely bound books. There is a carpet on the floor, and the stove is lit, and it's a winter's day. Okay, so let's actually look at the stage directions themselves and see what we can pull apart from this that actually gives us a little bit of insight into the world that Ibsen's trying to create. All right, so if we go back to the top and we actually look at the type of furniture that's used, all right, we've got the fact that it's inexpensive but with tastes tells us a little bit about their background. Okay, so this is not a family that is coming from wealth. Right, it's not a family that's coming from wealth, and you know, as we read through the play, we know this. All right, we know that, or it's implied that Nora's father wasn't exactly the best in terms of being frugal with his spending. We know that, you know, when Helma got sick, it wasn't easy for them to find the funding to turn around and go over to Italy for him to recover. So that actually makes a lot of sense then, the fact that it's inexpensive. The fact that it has, it's a tasteful setup though, this helps us understand Helma's situation a little bit later on. He wants this feeling of being, you know, this upper middle class, this bourgeoisie household, all right? So we can see that even in the setting itself. All right, so if you're going to make a commentary on it, you don't need to just focus on what's said, but you can actually focus also on what's on the stage. All right? What other examples have we got here that reinforce that? What other things in terms of the setting? So, yes, they've got the piano. Piano was, at that time, a very middle class, upper middle class thing to have. Right? In the Romantic period, which is what this is, the 1800s, the piano, upright pianos became really readily available for people to purchase. And so a lot of people started to get them into their homes, into like these salon lounge areas, which is what this setting is, okay? Sorry? It's a symbol, I guess, of that emerging upper middle class, all right? The people who are in the lower class, the very working class, would never have had it, okay? If you think later on down the track when we're going to study Persuasion, a lot of the Austen novels will talk about, you know, having a piano there in the room, right? And it's the right thing for a lady to do, to be studying the piano, okay? A lot of those characters that we find in Austen's texts, however, they're a little bit higher up than our Nora here, okay? We don't really get, we never see her playing, so we don't really get a sense of her ability on the instrument, but it's very much a middle class sort of thing to have. Okay. If we also look, we've got these things. So etchings on the wall, little china ornaments, and other little knickknacks. This bric-a-brac. Okay. All of this sort of stuff helps set this scene for a very middle-class home. Okay. If you think about a lot of your grandparents' homes, you know, they might have one of those, particularly the Europeans. They'll have one of those big glass cabinets with all these little things that they collect. Yes, they just stay there for show in the fancy lounge room that nobody goes into at the front of the house. Yep. Yeah, you're seeing a very similar sort of thing here. Okay, and it's very, very much a middle class culture. Okay, so we're getting that all out of the setting. I guess one of the other things to look at, very much like 12 Angry Men, this is a very closed-in setting. Okay, we've got the doors at the back that lead out, and you know you get the impression that they lead out, but all the action happens here in this closed room. Okay, so I've just made a note up the top there. It's closed in, it's claustrophobic. Okay, it creates that I guess trapped feeling that we can see Nora is experiencing, living in this family, living as, you know, Helmer's little bird, as he calls her. All right. So all of this is just coming out of this. We haven't actually heard any dialogue yet. Okay, let's move on. Down the bottom here, we then actually get the introductory action. Okay, not necessarily dialogue, but action. So a bell rings in the hall outside, and a moment later the door is heard to open. Nora comes into the room, humming happily. She is in outdoor clothes and is carrying an armful of parcels, which she puts down on the table to the right. Through the hall door, which she has left open, can be seen a porter. He is holding a Christmas tree and a hamper, and he gives them to the maid who has opened the front door. Okay, if you recall, yesterday we were talking about Marxists' readings. These sort of characters here, so the porter, the maid, we see very little of their lives. We do not hear their voices. Okay, so that is a perspective that you can take when you're pulling apart scenes like this, if you want to. Right, the fact that these people are very much marginalised in this play. We don't hear from them. Okay, and obviously from the Christmas tree, we ascertain what time of year it is. It's the festive season. Okay, much like the piano, being able to afford a Christmas tree, again, is a sign of their middle class and up status. All right, it wouldn't have been something that people would have been able to afford if they were poor, if they were of the lower class. Right, so again, it's very much that middle class bourgeoisie type of feel that they're setting up in this first opening section of the play. All right, and then we get directly into some dialogue. Okay, so Nora opens up. Hide the Christmas tree properly, Helena. The children mustn't see it till this evening when it's been decorated. And to the porter, taking out her purse, how much is that? It's 50 order. There's a krona. No, keep the change. The porter thanks her and goes, and Nora shuts the door. Now, the fact that she allows him to keep the change is our first sort of signifier that they're not, they're pretty well-to-do. Okay, they're not obviously starving. So she's able to give somebody a tip. All right, they're obviously in a situation where they're comfortable, and we get that ascertained, we get that confirmed, a couple of pages in, don't we, when we learn about Helmer's promotion. Okay, so they're living comfortably. All right, we'll keep moving. So Nora takes off her outdoor clothes, laughing quietly and happily to herself. Taking a bag of macaroons from her pocket, she eats one or two, then goes cautiously to her husband's door and listens. Yes, he's in. She starts humming again and she goes over to the table on the right. Okay? Now, you know, words such as this, cautiously, are really interesting in terms of ascertaining Nora's mood and how she interacts with Helma. Okay, there's a lot that you can glean from that, and a lot you can infer. Is she being cautious because she's eating these forbidden treats, right? Or is she being cautious because he's in his study and he's working, and she doesn't want to disrupt the man while he's working? That's not her job as a woman, as a wife. Okay, a few different things that you can infer. So make a note of them, please. All right. And with the cautiousness, why is it? Right? What is it that's actually making her cautious? Okay? We also read quite a few descriptions of Nora as being a silly, flighty character. Okay? That's also very much established right at the start by the behavior that's been given. Okay? Here in the script. This sort of humming and laughing to herself. Right? She seems very happy, but you can clearly see why some people would infer that she's just a silly, flighty lady. Okay? She doesn't seem to be very serious. She's not settled. She's acting like a little child, which makes sense considering he treats her like a little child. And that's when you start linking it to that infantilizing idea that we also talked about. All right, let's actually get their first interaction. Okay. Where are we? So, Helma, from his study, and here we go. Is that my little skylark twittering out there? Nora, busy opening the parcel, says it is. And Helma says, scampering about like a little squirrel? Yes. Well, when did the squirrel get home? Just this minute. She slips the bag of macaroons in her pocket and wipes her mouth. Come in here, Torvald, and you can see what I've bought. Now, to start off with, we've got little skylark, little squirrel, all right? Obviously, he's meaning these as terms of affection. You can clearly see that, all right? But I've put the question mark there because is it demeaning calling her those things, all right? Is it belittling? Is it that infantilizing that we were talking about? Does it sound like he's actually talking to a little child rather than his wife? Okay? And as we go through, you'll pick up this over and over again. It's very, very common all the way throughout. Something we also have discussed is the fact that she calls him by his first name. Okay? We don't immediately understand the difference here, but soon we'll learn Helma's pride in his surname. And the fact that when Krogstad comes in, he's actually quite offended by the fact that he's calling him by his first name. He thinks it's too informal. Now, for a modern day audience, we would expect that a wife would be calling her husband by her first name, right? But if you consider the situation that has been established here in terms of the dynamic between the husband and the wife, it's actually quite interesting that she's calling him by his first name, right? She's not elevating him to that status of being, the breadwinner, the moneymaker, the person who's got all of the power. She's actually trying to bring him down a notch by calling him that. All right, and that dynamic is automatically set up by the next thing that he says. So he says, "I'm busy," but then a moment later he opens the door and looks out, pen in hand. "Did you say bought? What? All that? Has my little feather brain been out wasting money again?" Okay, so you can see how, just like all of the other little pet names, this is prefaced in the same way, little feather brain, but it obviously carries with it a negative connotation. A feather brain is, it's very patronizing. It's implying that you can't think for yourself, all right? It's perpetuating that sort of flighty reading of Nora, but been out wasting money again. So it's obviously something that he thinks she does often, right? But it also, what I've written there is censuring. He's essentially quite lightheartedly telling her off. Okay? And you can see that in spite of the fact that they seem to be a well-to-do family, money is not something that's forgotten to him. It's something that he does concern himself with. And that's what I mean by this, this grey area in terms of class that they're in. She seems to think that they're well-to-do enough that she can tip the guy who's just bought the Christmas tree. But he's worrying about overspending. Okay? Now, obviously, as we read on, we learn that she's actually not that frivolous with her money. She's actually probably the more prudent one. Okay? But again, that sets up that interesting power dynamic. He's establishing himself as the person who's supposed to be thinking about all the money, but we learn later on that she's actually the one who's been really thrifty. Okay? She says, but Torvald, surely this year we can let ourselves go just a little bit. It's the first Christmas that we haven't had to economize. Still, we mustn't waste money, you know. Oh, Torvald, surely we can waste a little now, just the teeniest bit. Now that you're going to earn a big salary, you'll have lots and lots of money. All right? If you have a look, the way that she's speaking there, Ibsen isn't using a very sophisticated type of language, is he? It's a very common language. I've just made a note here along the side, sorry if you can't read it. All right? But it is very common language. It's, I guess, in many ways reinforcing this middle-class realist or naturalist form that Ibsen's taken on. Okay? He isn't using a highbrow language. If you think about, the sophisticated drama of 1 century, 2 centuries before this, it's very, very different to our Shakespearean language. It's very, very different to formal theatre. Very much common language. It's also, as I said, pulling apart those realist concerns. Income, the economy, being cautious about our money. They're all everyday problems for people. Okay, so he's picking up on them from the word go. You immediately get the sense that this is not going to be melodrama. This is going to be very much a naturalist sort of play, a realist play. Continuing on. After New Year's Day, yes, but there'll be a whole quarter before I get paid. Pooh, we can always borrow money till then. Nora, can you see that every time he seems to be speaking with her, he's using exclamation marks? He seems to be in that censuring tone all the way through while he's speaking to her. Right? Those exclamations each time. Okay, so you're also getting impressions of his tone. He goes to her and takes her playfully by the ear. Again, you get this very, very strong imagery of a father taking a naughty child by the ear almost. Okay? So, definitely patronizing in terms of the action. And another one, the same little scatterbrain. Okay? Very much demeaning, very much censuring, right? But in almost a light-hearted way. So all the readings that we've had of Helmer, setting up this dichotomy in terms of the relationship between him and his wife, and we can critique Helmer as much as we like, but it's almost like he doesn't even know he's doing it. It's like the norm. I'm the husband. This is how I should speak to my wife, right? So again, reflecting in many ways the expected norms, the expected value systems of that society that Ibsen was growing up in. Okay, let's keep going. Just suppose I borrowed 1,000 krona today and you went and spent it all by Christmas, and then on New Year's Eve a tile fell on my head, and there I lay. Nora, putting a hand over his mouth, shh, don't say such horrible things. Okay. But suppose something of the sort were to happen. Nora responds with, if anything as horrid as that were to happen, I don't expect I should care whether I owed money or not. Okay? Now, I guess you can read that line in a couple of different ways. One, that she'd be so much affected by the fact that her husband is dead or injured that all she'd be worrying about is him. So she's fulfilling that dutiful wife. But in some ways, this also acts as foreshadowing the fact that, well, she's already borrowed money and she's dealing with it, so she's very capable. Okay? Because we don't have any indication about her tone, you can infer what you want from those sort of lines. And there are little examples as you go through the play of her knowing more than he appears to understand she knows. Understanding more about the world. Okay? So, but what about the people I'd borrowed from? Them? Who bothers about them? They're just strangers. Nora, Nora, just like a woman. Again, can you see the exclamation marks all the way throughout? Right? This is not something that just happens once or twice. It's continuous with his character. Just like a woman. Also, what a gender assumption is he making there? Yes, there's an ignorance. They don't know anything. So typical that they wouldn't have any concerns about the real world. All right? Setting up the value systems that are already there in Ibsen's world. Okay? In many respects, you can see that he's setting up the norms so that way he can then challenge them by the end of the play. Yeah? But seriously, Nora, you know what I think about that sort of thing. No debts, no borrowing. There's something constrained, something ugly even, about a home that's founded on borrowing and debt. You and I have managed to keep clear up until now, and we shall still do so for the little time that is left. Now, what I've just made a note of here is this little speech from him establishes, it's establishing his moral stance on the issue of money, all right? On what he himself believes is the right thing to do. He doesn't like the idea of being indebted to somebody else. He doesn't feel as though the home should be established in that way, right? Something ugly even, right? It then makes sense that his reaction towards the end of the play is what it is, right? When we consider the type of language that he's using here. So these first scenes here really set up a lot of the character traits that we need to understand all the way throughout the rest of the play. Okay, so it's very, very important that you really pull it apart, spend a bit of time with it. Okay, Nora, going over to the stove, says, "Very well, Torvald, if you say so." Helma, following her, now, my little songbird, mustn't be crestfallen. Well, is the squirrel sulking?" Taking out his wallet, "Nora, guess what I have here?" And she turns around quickly and exclaims, "Money." "There," he hands her some notes. "Good heavens, I know what a lot has to go on housekeeping at Christmas time. 10, 20, 30, 40. Oh, thank you, Torvald, thank you. This will keep me going for a long time." All right, so now we've got a different setup happening in terms of the power dynamic. Firstly, again, we get this reinforcement. Little songbird. All right? Is my squirrel sulking? All right? He's treating her like a child, like a petulant child. That gets reinforced by the fact that when he does give her the money, you know, she's submissive. "Oh, thank you, Torvald, thank you. This will keep me going for a long time. It's like my pocket money, my allowance. Oh, you're giving me a little bit of extra. I'm wrapped. This is going to be fantastic for me." Okay? So, what's the power dynamic that you see here? What are we seeing? Sorry? Inequality with regards to... He's like the father in relationship, definitely. But, yeah, she's dependent upon him for the money. If she wants money, she has to go via him. She's got no sense of financial independence in this relationship. Okay, that's the power dynamic that we see in this married couple. All right? She's financially dependent upon him. Right? Again, it's setting up the value system of that time. Yes? She's upset, then he uses Good. So the comment is, because she's sulking, is that what you're saying? Because she's just turned around so very contrite, he thinks that he can win her favour back by giving her a little bit of extra cash. How much more demeaning is that? All right, in terms of the power relationship. Oh, maybe if I give her a little bit of extra money, she'll be happy again. And that's what I want. I want a happy, smiling wife. I don't want one who's sulking. Okay, so again, it's a really good observation. There's so many different ways that you can read this relationship that they've got going on. All right, let's finish off this opening section. Well, you must see that it does. And Nora says, oh yes, of course I will. But now, come and see all the things I've bought, so cheaply too. Look, here's a new suit for Ivar, and a sword too. Here's a horse and a trumpet for Bob, and here's a doll and a doll's bed for Emmy. They're rather plain, but she'll soon smash them to bits anyway. And these are dress lengths and handkerchiefs for the maids. Old Nanny really ought to have something more. Okay, so you can see that she's actually being quite conservative with her spending. Even though he's accused her of being, flippant with the way that she treats money, what we actually learn is that she's quite a conservative spender. All right? She's bought cheap toys because she knows the kids are going to destroy them. It's a contradiction that Helma doesn't even seem to notice. He automatically accuses her of being flighty and not understanding money, even though she's telling him, oh, look, I've managed to do this really, really cheaply. Okay? Okay. Just move this over. Yes. Good observation. Okay, again, just like we saw with in terms of their dialogue, we've just got passing comments with regards to the other women that are there in the household. Okay? So again, if you're going to go that Marxist line, there's all of these instances that you can pick up on. All right, let's keep going. All right, top of the next page. And Helma asks, and what's in that parcel? Nora's squealing. Right? Again, the type of direction that you get, like a little child. She perpetuates the notion that this infantilizing is actually perpetuated by her character as well. It's not something that just comes from Helma, right? And his demeaning pet names for her. It actually comes from her also. No, Torvald, you're not to see that till this evening. Aha, and now, little prodigal, what do you think you want for yourself? Oh, me? I don't want anything at all. But you must. Now tell me, within reason, that you feel you'd like. No, I really can't think of anything unless Torvald, well, not looking at him, playing with his waistcoat buttons. If you really want to give me something, you could. Come along. Out with it. And she says in a rush, you could give me money, Torvald. Only what you think you could spare, and then one of these days I'll buy something with it. All right. What do we think about all of these? About the ellipses, about the dashes. What's it implying? It's implying hesitation. All right? Considering she's going to ask him for more money, you see this person who's really scared to ask for more money. But at the same time, again, you can interpret it in a couple of different ways. Is she actually just manipulating him? All right? Yeah, there's little ways of looking at this. So one way is the hesitant wife who's really afraid to ask for more money because that would be her stepping out of her bounds. The other way to look at it is, no, hang on a second, Nora's a little bit smarter than everyone's letting on. And she's actually playing her husband. She's being quite manipulative and, acting like a little child and playing with his waist buttons and scamming a little bit more money out of him. Well, this is what I mean. All of his behavior is, it's like this is the norm for him. This is what I expect out of a wife in this time. Well, you could argue that he's shallow, yes. That I mean, he does try to win her happiness with was it $40? No, he doesn't, because he's looking at this behaviour, this hesitant, begging sort of behaviour as the norm. All right, but we can argue that perhaps she's being quite manipulative. Sorry? Naive? Well, they're all idiots. I don't know whether we can argue that. If you think about the ending, hasn't Helmer been naive? You could argue that the ending of the play implies that he's naive. He doesn't see her walking out and slamming the door. He doesn't see that coming at all. All right? So if we are going to go the argument of the manipulating wife, perhaps he is the naive husband. Right? That he can't see it. Right? They are readings that you can make. All right. Let's keep going. But Nora, oh do, Torvald, please, please do. Then I'll wrap it in pretty gold paper and hang it on the Christmas tree. Wouldn't that be fun? Again, with the little comments. What do they call little birds who are always making money fly? Yes, I know, ducks and drakes. But let's do what I said, Torvald, and then I'll have time to think of something that I really want. Now, that's very sensible, isn't it? Sorry? An emotional appeal? In what sense? What language is telling you it's an emotional appeal? The word sensible. Yes, you could say she's trying to appeal to his moral values. She's trying to say, no, I'll be sensible with my money, just like you want me to be. I'll be the dutiful wife or child in this case. So yes, you can definitely say that. And Helmer, smiling, so he's obviously happy about this. Oh, very. That is, it would be if you really kept the money I give you and actually bought something for yourself with it. But if it goes in with the housekeeping and gets spent on all sorts of useless things, then I only have to pay out again. Oh, but Torvald, you can't deny it, little Nora, now can you? All right? At this stage, if you're not sick of the little, okay, you're getting a very clear impression of his relationship with her. Okay? Putting an arm around her waist, it's a sweet little bird, but gets through a terrible amount of money. You wouldn't believe how much it costs a man when he's got a little songbird like you. All right? Very demeaning. Okay? And he's saying this to her face. All right? So he clearly feels as though this is the norm. All right? But he also, think about the way that he's speaking there. It's a sweet little bird, but it gets through a terrible amount of money. It gets through. He suddenly switched to third person whilst speaking about her to her. All right? As if she doesn't even realize how much spending she's doing and how much it's costing him. Okay? Again, there's in some ways, if I use the term, a sense of dramatic irony that's forming here. All right? That he's talking to her in that way, and we quickly learn that she's actually the one who's rescued him and is paying off a debt and using all of this money that he doesn't even realize is going through to pay a debt that saved his life. Yes?
Priority about the money irrelevant more because how to say everything before the word but is irrelevant. So it's a sweet little bird, but it gets through a terrible amount of money.
Okay? Did you all hear that? So the argument is that everything before the word but is irrelevant. So he says it's a sweet little bird, but it gets through a terrible amount of money. So that's actually the focus point for him, the money. Again, think about the ending. This makes sense if we think about the ending. Okay? And the fact that it's his name that he's worried about.